Having decided not to buy BHP, we then sat down with the senior executives and directors to work out how to unravel this mess. It was a mess because Holmes Court could not hang on to his stock. Now, in the end, we worked out a deal where BHP bought its own shares from Holmes Court and cancelled the shares. That gave a good lift to BHP's share price. We decided to sell our BHP shares on the market, which we did, and we made a profit, a very substantial profit overall. And then BHP, as part of the deal, sold its 20% of Elders to Harlan, which was the company formed for management to own shares in Elders. That all worked very, very well. And we'd sort of sorted it out. I went off the board, Holmes Court was off the board, and that made Harlan the biggest shareholder in Elders. The second biggest shareholder was Peter Scanlon's investment company, his private investment company, with a group of about 20 people, I think, were in it. And he finally in '88 wanted to sell his stake in Elders. I think he had about 16%. We had about 23, 24. That was Harlan. He wanted a small premium to sell his stake out. We said we would underwrite that premium, this is Harlan, underwrite the price, but all shareholders could buy Mr. Scanlon's shares on a pro rata basis in Elders. Well, the board were very unhappy, or three of my directors were very unhappy. They said you are de facto giving Harlan control of Elders without providing the premium, which was probably partially correct, could have been, and you should allow every shareholder to get out at that small premium. So I said, all right, we'll see if we can round up the money to do that, which we did. Citibank led the consortium, and one of the funniest things, we signed the deal for $6 billion in New York, and the vice chairman of Citibank said, I'm taking you up to the boardroom on the, I don't know, the 50-something floor on Fifth Avenue, and he said, we're going to have a drink. I said, well, that'll be wonderful, and said, Citibank don't let anybody have a drink. We don't drink in our boardroom, but you're the second person who'll be able to have a drink to celebrate the signing of this $6 billion deal. I said to him, who was the first? He said, the Pope. The Pope actually came in, and they went up to the boardroom several years earlier, and they said, what would you like to drink? And he said, I'd like a sherry. They didn't have any alcohol there, so they went down the 40 floors, came back and had a sherry. So I was the second person to have a drink in the Citibank's boardroom, which was a lot of fun. The mistake we made then is we made the offer. The shareholders could either buy their share of Scanlon's Elders shares, or they could accept their offer that Harlan was forced by these directors to make. We should have pitched the price higher, because in the end we got 52% of Elders under the control of Harlan. We should have actually, and of course then what happened? We had the controlling influence, but we didn't have the access to the cash flow, the huge cash flow of Elders, to one, service our debt. And had we offered more and made it contingent that we had to get 90%, then we could have merged both companies. Alan Bond did a similar thing, but he didn't mind. What he did was he borrowed the money for his holding company and finished up going to jail because he was never able to repay it. We didn't act in that sort of a manner. It was just a disaster. So that was really basically the end, or the beginning of the end. In '89, the board decided we'd sold down 20% to Asahi. Harlan was still in trouble. I resigned as Chief Executive and Chairman of Elders, handed over to Nobby Clark and Peter Bartels. They would not increase the dividends, and they were strangling Harlan. Never forgiven either of them for trying to do what they did. And the result was that Harlan was in real strife. The board, after my resignation, I stayed on the board, but they decided in '89-90, when a crash came again, that they had to dispose of all the other businesses, the investment company, Elders Investments, the resources business, the international business, and Elders Finance. They did it at a terrible time, cost the company a lot of money, to make it a single-purpose brewer. Now, as a single-purpose brewer, it was still a dominant force in the world. What, of course, happened is, I left in '91. What, of course, happened was that the people who followed me into the brewery made fundamental errors. Bartels left and went to Coles, and he hadn't done anything very much. Ted Kunkel became the chief executive. He hated going to England. He didn't like the people over there, so he decided to sell Courage. They sold it at a very, very low price, about half its real value, which was a disastrous decision. They went into the wine business by buying a huge wine company in America when the Australian dollar was about 52 cents, and of course they paid far too much for it. And then there was a price war in the States in the wine business, so they didn't make any money. In the end, my son Tom reckons they've invested $6 billion. They've lost $6 billion in the wine business. They then lost track of Kunkel retired. They then got some accountants. The board changed, was a bunch of accountants in charge, and they mucked up the beer business. They lowered the alcoholic content from 4.9 to 4.5. They changed the advertising, which had been so successful. And a fundamental change came into the brewing business. It was much easier to have small mini breweries, which gave some new competition. And the other thing they did was the foreigners, instead of shipping their beer in like the Heinekens, started to get it made by CUB, which meant they were able to compete against the CUB products. So this, over 10 years, they kept going backwards. It was a very, very poor performance. And of course now, one of the biggest icons in Australian industry, CUB Foster's, has been bought over, ironically, by SAB Millers, who were two of our great friends in my time at the brewery, and they merged into one company. I don't think it's a bad thing it's happened, because I think they will still be making Foster's in Australia, and it will still employ lots of people. It'll still be the dominant brands, and these people know what they're doing in the brewing industry like we did many years ago. Well, that's the end of this saga. I've summarised it all over several episodes. If you've got any questions, send them into the website and I'll be happy to try and answer them. Thank you for watching.